Blazing Saddles is wild, offensive, and unforgettable. But even after 50 years, there's one scene that no one noticed. A blooper so bold, so strange, it was almost too outrageous to be real. From fart jokes and Yiddish speak-caking cowboys to secret casting disasters and deleted scenes too shocking to air. The truth behind this movie is way messier than you think. What did Mel Brooks hide? Why was one line cut before anyone ever saw it? And how did a total stranger end up in the final shot? Let's discover. Section 1. Setting the stage. Why Blazing Saddles still matters. When Blazing Saddles hit theaters in 1974, people didn't know whether to laugh or walk out. It tore apart the cowboy myth, made fun of racism right to its face, and ended with a movie set brawl that breaks the fourth wall. It was offensive, it was loud, and somehow it worked. But why was it ever made? How did it survive the censors? And what's the huge blooper in Blazing Saddles that nobody noticed until now? To understand the chaos and brilliance of Blazing Saddles, you have to understand where America was in 1974. The Vietnam War had just ended in shame. Watergate had exploded. Nixon was on the verge of resignation. Trust in government was low. The civil rights movement had won legal victories, but racism was still deeply embedded in American life, especially in the movies. Hollywood westerns still portrayed white men as heroes and everyone else as background noise. Mel Brooks didn't just want to spoof westerns, he wanted to blow them up. Blazing Saddles is set in the Old West, but it's really about 1970s America. The plot is deceptively simple. A greedy land developer desperate to drive settlers out of a town called Rockridge convinces the governor to appoint a black sheriff, expecting the town's people to panic and flee. But the new sheriff, Bart, played by Cleon Little, proves to be cleverer, sharper, and more capable than anyone expects. What begins as a racist turns into a bizarre, genre-breaking rebellion, with Bart leading the charge against both the villains and the small-minded town that tried to destroy him. On the surface, it looks like a slapstick comedy, but underneath the gags and sound effects is a dangerous idea. That racism, when exposed to light and laughter, crumbles. That's what made Blazing Saddles so powerful and so controversial. Audiences weren't used to hearing the N-word in a comedy, even when it was used to mock bigotry itself. They weren't used to toilet humor in mainstream movies. They definitely weren't used to a black hero outsmarting every white man in town. Brooks was pushing every line he could think of, and a few he probably didn't. Mel Brooks directed the film, but he didn't do it alone. One of his co-writers was Richard Pryor, the most fearless black comedian of the era. Pryor knew how to write jokes that bit down hard. He helped shape Bart into a character who wasn't just cool and clever, but fully aware of the absurdity of his situation. Pryor had originally been considered to play Bart himself, but the studio refused to insure him because of his history with harmful substances. That decision may have changed the tone of the film entirely. Cleon Little brought Broadway polish and deadpan wit. Pryor brought fire to the script. The film went after everyone. Racists, politicians, cowboys, actors, old-school studio bosses. No one was safe. It shattered the idea that satire had to be subtle. Blazing Saddles wasn't interested in being polite. It wanted to slap you across the face, then make you laugh at how ridiculous the slap was. It mixed lowbrow and high concept, and it didn't care who it offended as long as the audience got the point. The result, a film that could never be made the same way today. Even the way the movie ends is a statement. Instead of sticking to its Old West setting, Blazing Saddles breaks through the literal walls of the Warner Brothers studio, spilling into other soundstages, Hollywood streets, and eventually a theater showing the very same movie. It's a mess. It's absurd. It's genius. The characters become aware that they're in a movie. The satire eats itself alive, and Mel Brooks closes the loop with pure chaos. It's one of the first self-aware endings in American comedy, and it set the stage for everything from Ferris Bueller to Deadpool. But even in all this madness, something slipped through. A moment so subtle that it took decades for anyone to notice it. And once you see it, you'll never unsee it. Section 2. The dirty joke that the dirty joke became Blazing Saddles' most hidden mistake. The most shocking scene in Blazing Saddles didn't make it into the movie. It's not a blooper. It's not a prank. And it's not some backstage accident. It's a deleted moment so outrageous, so charged, and so unforgettable that even Mel Brooks, the man who put flatulence on the big screen, decided he couldn't go through with it. And here's the real twist. Most people didn't even know this scene existed until recently. It was hidden in plain sight, buried in interviews and recollections, quietly mentioned, but never shown. Now it's resurfaced, and it changes everything you thought you knew about the film. So what was the scene? Why was it cut? And why is it so important? Now, in the final cut of Blazing Saddles, we get a brief, funny bedroom exchange between the glamorous Lily Vannup, played by Meline Kahn, and Sheriff Bart, portrayed by Cleon Little. It's flirtatious. It's suggestive, but it's nothing compared to what was originally shot. In the deleted version, Laylee and Bart are in her dressing room after sharing a candlelit meal, complete with a cheeky term schneiden, which itself is a not-so-subtle euphemism. As the lights go out and the screen fades to black, Lily's voice cuts through the dark in a heavy German accent. Oh, is it true what they say about you people? How well you are built. Is it true? There's a pause. The audience is left hanging. And then comes the punchline. I hate to disillusion you, ma'am, but you're sucking on my arm. In a single beat, the film would have taken a massive risk, touching on a long-standing stereotype about black male anatomy, flipping it into comedy, and then undercutting it with a deadpan line. That one moment would have combined race, physicality, satire, and innuendo in a way that was arguably more explosive than anything else in the film. And yet, it never made it in. Because even for a film like Blazing Saddles, there were limits. Mel Brooks has spoken about this scene in interviews, including one with Conan O'Brien. He explained that it just felt like too much going past the point of satire and into something he worried would overshadow everything else. As someone who was trying to walk the tightrope between humor and commentary, he decided it wasn't worth the risk. So he shelved it. But that wasn't the only moment that got cut. There's another piece of dialogue that has floated around in production notes and crew memories. In this scene, Lily Von Stupp is once again turning up the charm, preparing to seduce Bart. On the surface, she's telling him to take off his ammunition belt, but the phrase is clearly meant to sound like something else, an invitation delivered in a sultry tone. It's a throwaway line, but one loaded with meaning. And then there's the third moment, a less defined but equally provocative exchange that never made it past the script stage. Several early drafts of Blazing Saddles featured a more hands-on version of Lily's famous seduction of Bart. In this version, Lily not only asks about the stereotype that black men are well endowed, she tries if she can see it for herself. The scene walks right up to the line of physical contact and crosses into territory that would be considered deeply controversial even today. But the comedy lies in Bart's reaction. Cool, unimpressed, and ultimately dismissive. What makes all of this so fascinating is that Brooks himself has later said he regrets cutting some of these scenes. In interviews, he's admitted that he may have overcorrected, that he wanted the film to push the envelope, and then stop short of going all the way. His concern was that people wouldn't get it, that they'd misread the joke, or worse. In one conversation he said, "Maybe I got scared." So, here's the question. What would Blazing Saddles have looked like with those scenes left in? Would it still be celebrated as a classic? Or would it have been banned, buried, or forgotten? There's no clear answer. But it does show us something important. This wasn't just shock for shock's sake. These scenes were part of a larger effort to tear down the polite facade of Hollywood storytelling. Brooks wasn't just trying to make you laugh. He was trying to make you uncomfortable, to expose racism not just as a problem, but as a ridiculous system of beliefs propped up by fear, ignorance, and power. And that's where Blazing Saddles becomes more than just a comedy. It becomes a landmark in satirical filmmaking. It's a movie that used humor like a surgeon's tool, cutting deep, exposing nerves, and daring the audience to flinch. The scenes that stayed in are legendary for their brazenness. But the scenes that got cut, they show us the edge Brooks was walking. They show us how close he came to going even further. And they remind us that sometimes the real story isn't what you see on screen. It's what almost made it in Section 3. Chaos, Farts, and Chaos Farts' Accidental Genius. One of the most iconic moments in Blazing Saddles is the campfire scene where cowboys eat beans and audibly pass gas, a first in Hollywood history. In 1974, no major film had ever included a flatulence gag with full sound. And Mel Brooks didn't just allow it. He doubled down after the initial cut. He actually went back and added more fart sounds in post-production. Wait, because the test audiences were laughing so hard they couldn't hear the end of the joke. And because Brooks knew what the studio didn't. This wasn't just toilet humor. This was something bigger. For decades, Westerns had romanticized the cowboy. Strong, silent, heroic, always stoic and clean. Brooks wanted to break that illusion. He wanted to show cowboys not as mythic figures, but as real, stinky, sweaty men who ate too much and slept in the dirt. It destroyed the nice, polished image Hollywood had spent decades creating, and audiences loved it. But the executives at Warner Brothers weren't laughing. They called the scene vulgar, lowbrow, and pointless. Brooks ignored their concerns and kept the scene, helping to redefine what could be shown and mocked in mainstream comedy. This commitment to chaos didn't stop with sound effects. It extended all the way to the film's climactic battle, which spills out of the fictional town of Rock Ridge and onto the Warner Brothers lot itself. The final sequence is a deliberate, absurd breakdown of the fourth wall. Characters fight through fake saloons, crash into a musical number, and end up on a Hollywood street where the action continues in front of a real theater. It's meant to feel chaotic and ridiculous. But even within that chaos, something happened that no one planned. As the cast runs out of the studio gate and into the street, a man wearing a sweater walks calmly through the middle of the shot. He's not an extra. He's not in costume. He's not part of the film. He was just walking by. A random pedestrian who happened to stumble onto a live set while the cameras were rolling. Instead of cutting the shot or trying to remove him, Mel Brooks told the crew, "Leave him in. It's funny." And he was right. The man's presence, confused, casual, oblivious, adds another layer of absurdity to a scene already packed with it. He became accidentally part of cinematic history, a living blooper that was never corrected. These accidental moments became the film's best features. Brooks had built a film-making style around unpredictability. He encouraged his actors to improvise, to break character, to play with timing. In some cases, the best moments in the film weren't even in the script. Gene Wilder's delivery as the Waco Kid was so relaxed, so offhand, that he often changed his lines in the moment. Clean Little's facial reactions, dry tone, and quiet sarcasm gave Bart an intelligence that wasn't written, but emerged on set. Malene Khan, who played Lily Von Stupp, improvised several of her most famous lines, including her breathy, off-key performance of "I'm Tired." Brooks didn't just allow this chaos. He wanted it. He believed that comedy came from freedom, not control. That a perfectly timed mistake was sometimes funnier than a scripted joke. Nowhere is that philosophy more obvious than in the scene with the Yiddish-speaking Native Americans. In a flashback to Bart's childhood, he and his family are surrounded by a group of warriors on horseback. It looks like the beginning of a massacre, but then the tribal chief, played by Mel Brooks himself, speaks. And it's not Apache or Sioux or any indigenous language. It's Yiddish. Full sentences delivered fluently. The other warriors nod in agreement. One even shouts, "Shabbos." It's jarring. It's surreal and it's hilarious. But what does it mean? Brooks knew exactly what he was doing. By having the Native Americans speak a Jewish dialect, he was calling attention to how Hollywood Westerns had historically treated indigenous peoples. They were often portrayed as the other, a foreign enemy, rarely humanized, almost never given real language. By giving them Yiddish, Brooks pointed out how shallow and foolish those portrayals really were. The scene works because it's unexpected, but it lingers because it says something real. That blend of absurdity and satire also shows up in the film's opening theme.